Okay, so for our next presentation, it will be co-presented by two movers and shakers in the field of breakthrough energy. One of them, our first presenter, has authored The Coming Energy Revolution and Breakthrough Power, which has been published in 10 countries, and for 30 years, she's traveled around the world to interview scientists, inventors, attended countless conferences as both a guest and a presenter. She writes for Atlantis Rising and Infinite Energy magazines and has worked in radio, daily newspapers, and has been on staff of a regional magazine. She's been a publicist for groups including a theater company that traveled in gypsy wagons pulled by Clydesdales. The co-presenter, Susan Manewich, is the president of the New Energy Movement, and some of her professional accomplishments are in consciousness leadership, development, and emotional intelligence, where her work is praised by clients, including Harvard Business School, Yale University, University of Chicago, London Business School, Singapore Medical School, and corporate and nonprofit clients. While on the Resonance Academy faculty team and a director with the Resonance Project Foundation, Susan was involved in key organizational strategic initiatives. She is now co-authoring a new book, Hidden Energy, with Jeane Manning. Susan is employed in Massachusetts, although she'd rather be surfing in Hawaii. For their presentation, they will be answering questions such as, what are the best ways to tell the world about this invention? Or how can I spread the word about game-changing energy science? The presentation is called Think Strategically and Spread Your Message. Help me welcome Jeane Manning.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Communication 101. Figure out your microphones. Okay. You people have the most important message on the planet on certain levels. And so if there's anything that we can do to help you get out the message to the world, we want to do that. I have some expertise in, having been a newspaper editor and worked in the media, that sort of thing. But I see in this room a lot of expertise, too, in various aspects of communications. And the speakers at the conference have kind of acted out one of our principles, which is tell your story, is one of the most powerful ways to get your message out. And you have done a great job. It's not just dry, this is our technology and this is how it works, but rather this is how I got into it and this is why it's important. And another aspect that I find really brilliant here is the number of speakers who inject some humor into it. We used to get a lot of good humor with Peter Lindemann's talks. Paul Babcock gets this in his talks. And of course, Aaron gave us a comic reference today. Now we have new vocabulary, the bizarro world, as opposed to ours. So that's very important. I remember saying, how do angels fly? And the answer is they take themselves lightly. So it's a survival mechanism too when you're in a field that is so beleaguered, when the chasm between the bizarro reality and what you learn about here is so great. Instead of getting discouraged, just laugh at it. I don't know any new energy jokes, if anybody can. Well, I did hear one kind of related once about not real skeptics, but pseudo-skeptics, the kind that Aaron had some unkind words for. And so how many pseudo-skeptics does it take to change a light bulb? It takes 3. 1 to change the bulb, 1 to troll the light bulb forums and warn away investors, and a 3rd to claim that light bulbs violate some law of physics and therefore they can't be real. So another aspect that really impressed me today was the willingness to look beyond just the physical dimension of your technical inventions and how they work, but rather what's behind this, and Aaron spelled it out this time, that this is all about consciousness. And I'm thinking about somebody that I think it was Plato way back in the Greek philosopher days, who was trying to get a message across to people who, he used the metaphor that they just wanted to be in the dark, so he talked about the cave. They were comfortable in the cave and with their belief system that there's nothing else outside it. And so they preferred to stay in the dark rather than they believed these myths that had been passed on generation after generation about how dangerous it was outside the cave, so they wouldn't even look there. So that's kind of like the pseudo-skeptics that just won't even look. They claim superiority, but you get right down to it, they have not investigated. I know Randall Mills has run into that a lot, and you all have. So we know what you're up against, and Susan is going to give you some good news about what's going on in the world, people who are groups that can potentially help you to get out your message, to strategize. She's the expert in strategies, not just the master's degree in organizational psychology, but also she's taught emotional intelligence. But more importantly, she's actually worked in the real world and helped organizations to develop their teams and get out their message. So I'd like to turn this over to Susan Manewich.
Oh, thank you. Oh!
Are you turned on?
Thank you, that's great. Good evening. I wasn't sure how many people were going to come back after dinner. So the fact that you're all here is actually quite impressive. Because this is my first time being here at this conference, and I didn't know what to expect and anticipate. So it's been enlightening, to say the least. And the speakers today and yesterday have just been incredibly impressive. And before getting really into the talk, one of the things that I want to acknowledge is that, and it's no criticism to any one person or thing, is, Jeane and I are the only two female speakers that are here at this conference. And it's not about the conference, it's the field in general, right? There's a I can't get this now, good. There's a predominant, male energy that's here. And here we are talking about the ether, the yin, the yang, and balance. And we all came from the mother, right? So, and trust me, I'm not up here to talk about the differences between male and feminine energy, yet to say that there is a balance and both is needed. And to take this moment now to acknowledge that, Jeane Manning, since 1986, has been supporting this field tirelessly. And when I read, yes, thank you. Thank you. And when I read how Jeane writes, so you don't have to be someone who's into changing the world or into technology to find her message really interesting in how she writes. So that is a skill and that is a gift, because it can pull in other people that, let's say, may be interested, but the way that that's communicated will make a difference between if they walk 2 steps further or if they take 3 steps back, right? So Jeane has been, in my opinion, quite a gift, and I'm incredibly humbled every time I read her writing. So working on this book together it's insanely humbling and an incredible gift every single day. So I'd also like to acknowledge Karen Elkins. There you are. So another, can you stand up for a moment? So Karen, how long have you been doing the magazine?
I've been doing Science to Sage for about 5 years.
5 years. And how long have you been supporting this field?
Well, that's different. I've been supporting gifted, innovative people for about 9 years. I had had a son who was gifted LD, who I created a school for that was out of the box and brought a lot of this innovative science in. That's what propelled me into creating the magazine, which is a continuum of a curriculum for living. So that if you guys want to learn about ether, if you want to learn about cymatics, you want to learn about the science of sound, it's done in a very like an art canvas way. So I'm dyslexic, so I need to be able to visualize. So I take art and science and I put them together as an art canvas. And it's my pleasure to feature many of you, which we will also see the guys here. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. And another acknowledgement. So I don't know everybody who's here. I'm sure there's people that can be called out. I just haven't met you yet, and I just want to thank you as well. But for your wives and for the people that have been supporting your crazy efforts and your crazy dreams, not that they're crazy, but maybe at some point even you questioned it. But to that acknowledgement, to thank that support that's been there, because I don't think, for some of us, if we didn't have that maybe we wouldn't be where we are. So that support system, what is a part of strategy? What's a part of communication? Actually having a very good support system around you is key. And to me, acknowledging that tonight, I think is something that, as we move forward and as who said it? I think Paul Babcock said, somebody said, we may have just half the puzzle. We may have half the piece. I'm not sure exactly what he was referring to, but my sense was, that yin and the yang balance. I think that's one of the keys to really help this field move forward, among some other things. So we'll be talking about a couple of things. We'll look at media, strategy, values, collaboration, communication. So they all seem like soft terms, right? Part of the yin, and that's okay. What I want to get into is this year. So you'll see a couple of things that you may have noticed up here. Now, this isn't about if you like Stephen Greer, if you like Nassim Haramein, if you like Kesh, or if you have an opinion on the cutie pie device. The reason that this is up here is because these numbers are growing. Alternative media. So here's the media component where we really start to get into seeing some things. And by the way, I wouldn't consider myself a media person. I'm someone who watches and sees these trends and happens to get pulled into a lot of conversations about major movies that are being made right now, documentaries that are being made, which a lot of us have been pulled into that if you're in this field long enough, right? And some of the information that's trying to get out there and who's doing that, which we'll talk about, because this is very, very key right now. So alternative media is growing exponentially right now. Yes, who said that? Yes, it's growing exponentially. It's actually forcing change right now. So things that you would not see on mainstream media a little while ago, which we have Robert Bigelow up there. You probably have seen that. Again, whether you want to talk about ETs or UFOs or not, the new energy tech, the free energy tech, it's incorporated in that when people see it. So you may not make that connection, or you may not like that connection, but the average person is making that connection, right? So it's, if UFOs and ETs exist, then how are they getting here? So what type of technology? That marriage is there. So I threw up some numbers here. So that blew a lot of people's minds when that news conference happened, or not, excuse me, when that interview happened. How many of you actually saw the article or actually saw the video? Okay, a couple of you. So 11.1 million people, that's the average viewership for 60 Minutes, just to throw that number up. So all of a sudden, people that didn't get any information on mainstream media is now getting information on this. So that's a big deal. It was also in the Washington Post, and it was probably in a couple of other places. It was on RT, but that's a bit alternative. But it was in the Washington Post. Unacknowledged, I spoke with the producer, director of that. I can't say this publicly yet, but I can tell you within the next month, access to tens of millions of people will be able to see this film. So that's a documentary that came out just in April of 2017. Raise your hand if you've heard of this film or maybe even saw it. Okay. Okay, so we've got some people. So tens of millions of people. The Connected Universe, raise your hand if you know about that. All right, so that's the Nassim Haramein, the Resonance Project, worked on that film. So that has been featured in 127 different countries. That's a lot of people that are seeing this, right? And again, that was a documentary, Kesh. I went on the site and, again, whatever you think of Kesh, 495,000 people have seen that trailer that he made. That's 500,000 people. And so how that affects my world is when I go to a dinner party or I go to a meeting, so people say, what about that Kesh device, Susan? What do you know about that? Right? So it's whatever information about this field is out there in the media, people ask about. Well, is it fund-worthy? Does it work? Can I get one? Can I build one? And so those are the questions that people ask, because this is, again, what they're seeing from the popularity standpoint. And you've got YouTube that began, what would we say, 2006, 2007? 2006, thank you. So YouTube 2006, and may I even just point to you, my friend. So people that take this information and put it online, like Russ Grease has done successfully, yes, another acknowledgement. People are seeing this and they feel that they can make a connection to the material. They feel like they can possibly do this, and especially whatever type of information that you're conveying to them. So it's making a difference. And we're really looking at 10 to 11 years. What used to be super hidden and super secret is now not, right? So social media and alternative media has really changed the landscape. And now alternative media is changing the landscape of mainstream media. So there's power here. There's potency here. And guess with that power and potency comes what? Responsibility. Absolutely. So, people like Jeane, people like myself, people like Karen, we're mamas, right? There's a mama bear thing that goes on with some of us as it relates to you, as it relates to your devices, as it relates to the ethics, the integrity, how this gets out, what eventually comes of this. So, that's an aspect that we have that I don't think we actually talk about so much, but we have it. And we will fight, and we will stand up, and we will protect, because we see that there's something, longer down the road here that's worthy of that. And so let's talk a little bit about that responsibility. And by the way, if you haven't seen the video, and I'm sorry I didn't pull it up to play it for that cutie pie device, it's pretty slick. And slick not in a negative way. It's quite nice. And it's quite beautiful. And so they did some great work with graphics, and it's nice. It's appealing to someone, again, that doesn't know too much about this technology if they're seeing it for the first time, which again is part of communicating the message. So a couple of other things here, as I'm saying, there's a lot of quick moving shifts in this field. A couple of other ones to acknowledge: Gaia TV. How many of you have heard of Gaia TV? Okay. I'm going to put on here, I'm going to be a little bit bold and write quantity versus quality. Viewership, perhaps, versus the accuracy of what's being portrayed, good vetting, good research, or not. And so I will share with you, and I won't name any specific names, but we're asked to participate in certain media projects, and here's what comes by our way. Can you give us the name of an inventor? Can you give us someone who has a working device? Can they come on TV? Can they appear? And so here's our vetting process. This is where our vetting process begins, and we start to ask some real fundamental questions like, well, who's funding this project? Who do you have as people that are already signed up for this project? And what is the main message that you're looking to communicate? What's that storyline? What's the plot there? Is this something that is actually fiction that you're presenting as nonfiction? Because that happens in this arena with the media, with the alternative media as well. And really have to be careful, because this is selling right now, whether or not you realize it. And this is the new energy tech. With all due respect, it's sexy, it's exotic, this is hidden, this is something secret. Does it have to do with some type of black ops? I mean, there's a whole mystery that goes along with it. For those of us who've been in it for a long time, it's like it's old hat, right? It's old story. But for other people who've been watching Hollywood movie after Hollywood movie and now figure out that, wow, there may be something to what's going on here, this is selling in a very, very unique and interesting way. And with that comes responsibility to ask some of these fundamental questions. Now, the little story that I'll tell is I did just last week had this call. And I'm not very fond of the lack of vetting and research that's done on behalf of one of these organizations. And can I say it? I asked my questions, and then I scolded a bit. I have never done that to anybody in a professional work setting, but I had to, because I believe, and I think we believe, that we're at such a critical point with what's going on in the planet, and at the brink of getting so much of this field legitimized in different ways and people collaborating, that the last thing that you want to do is make an error to have a potential, to have this be potentially marginalized. And when you look at some of these groups that have this large viewership and that potentiality of happening, no, not on our watch. And be mindful of that, because it may come your way. So ask those good questions, because I would never give any of your names to people unless you said it was okay and you wanted to do it, you wanted more press for whatever you're going through. But without ever asking those good questions and understanding and knowing, what's the angle? What is happening and what is going on? And with all due respect, there's an enormous amount of people that are confused out there. What's real, what's not? So there's the technology aspect, but then there's what can you really do with this? So does this make sense? And it's important, because now we've gotten to a standpoint where if people see a video clip and it's emotionally compelling, it may be considered a truth. Emotionally compelling does not necessarily equal a truth. And especially if we're in a need to really want to know and want to understand what's happening and going on out there, and it seems like this is the answer, right? But it may not be. And so the media is affecting change. So what else did I put on there? Oh, Rolling Stone just had it just came out July 6th, this year, obviously, just, what is it, 2 days ago, sorry. So Rolling Stone just had an article about new energy tech and potentiality of again, the whole UFO piece. But that hit Rolling Stone, and there's reasons. If you can see, there's a trickle effect that's happening and going on. What prompted it? I can't tell you, I don't know, but it's happening. There's a ripple effect, and it's occurring right now. And so my question to all of you would be, who do you want to control the narrative and the story for your work? And what part do you want to play in that? To me, be empowered in your own narrative as opposed to somebody telling it for you. And people that actually, there's people that are doing documentaries here now that are sitting in this audience and that will do diligence on their work. And there's others that won't. So realize that there's a potential role here that you have about being empowered to control your own narrative and your own story, as opposed to someone doing it for you. And Jeane, being one of the best researchers I know, sorry, it's true, writing pieces of information out and then handing it to the scientist and engineer and saying, can you read this? Do you approve of this? We're living in a day and age where sometimes people are taking short blips off of a YouTube video and presenting that as fact without doing any follow-up to maybe really understand what the person meant, right? So then it's taken out of context and whatnot. So the other piece that I want to mention is, as Aaron pointed out, reading the bio. So, I call it my day job. And at night, what I used to do, and on the weekends, is I would go work with a group of scientists and engineers, and I did this for probably a good 15 years in Cambridge. I'm from Massachusetts, and a Harvard astrophysicist, and we'd work to understand the shift on the planet, but also from a technology standpoint relating to consciousness. And you make some friends and you have some clients, and soon enough you're in a bit of the academic circle, right? I can tell you right now that there's high level academic interest going on from a genuine standpoint now. And it seems to be in balance. But that's happening. And because of the media and the information that keeps being pushed out, that you are all pushing out, it's making an impact also in academic institutions, and it's making a difference from potential financing relating to some of these projects. So I can clearly say that that is coming probably quickly down the pipeline. And to figure out, again, what role potentially would you like to have with that as well. So hasn't it been for the longest time, well, we need to get academics to approve of what we're doing, and then you all finally went, no, we don't need that. and now it seems that there's an interest because even they realize that the system's broken. Medical and energy, it's broken. And there's some brave people inside that are willing to shift it from the inside out. So what we see occurring and how the media aspect is important. So from a strategy standpoint, when I look at strategy, it seems like a very left-brained word, so I'd like to break it out a little bit differently. So the way that I would define strategy, as Jeane and I were talking about this, is it's an integration of logic. So lives, it's life, right? Lives. The L, logic. So that's including financial, legal, science. But intuition and values and synchronicity. Logic is too slow right now. You've got, and not to, I see you there. I just looked, and there you are, Al. You're, boom, right there. Talking about synchronicity that just exhibited naturally. Sometimes whatever may be going on in this planet is too slow logic-wise. And it does seem like things are speeding up. Whatever the thing is, you all can explain that a lot better than I can. But something is happening where it does seem, would you raise your hand if you feel like you're being guided in a different way maybe than you were like 5 years ago? Okay, very good. Yeah, so probably half the room. So that, whether it's intuition, whether it's a knowing, whether it's something else that you want to call it, doesn't matter, but there's still a need for the logic piece. I forgot who said it, like if you see a train coming, you're not going to probably stand there and, hope that it doesn't hit you or, try to dematerialize and hope for the best. But that we're still living in this world where we all just ate. We put food in our body. That's something that we need. So there's this need for the logic piece still. We're still in this, reality, so to speak. But the intuition and values, which we'll talk about in the next slide. In synchronicity, how many of you had events occur from a synchronicity standpoint in the last 6 months that you just went, okay, I can't figure this out. I just have to roll and flow with this right now because it makes no sense on the logical realm, but I just got to roll with it. Raise your hand. Yeah. Wow. So synchronicity is part of your strategy. And another question. How many of you maybe, actually, how many of you went with it right away without second guessing it? Okay. Raise your hand if it took you a little longer. Okay, very good. For those who took a little bit longer, are you now doing it consistently, like you're following the synchronicity when it happens? Raise your hand. Okay, okay. So that's part of your strategy. It seems that we're being asked to integrate more of this together as part of our strategy. I know for me, it felt like 6 months ago, my brain was going to explode. I'm like, I can't handle anymore. It's like there's too much. But somehow, in some way, it began to reorganize and come together. But it was like a mess in my head at first. So the other part to this, so we create devices to have that resonance, right, to feel good. Certain devices that you're in, you feel euphoric or you feel healthier when you get out. Would you say, yes, that's one of the things that we've talked about today? Well, what about human-to-human resonance? How about when I saw Karen, I haven't seen Karen, actually I haven't seen you, we just Skyped. So I put my hand on Karen's face and I'm like, oh, Karen. Because, you know, I get a chance to feel the feeling of another human being that I've had a connection with. And Jeane I haven't seen in, you know, a year, right? But we talk almost at least every other day on the phone. So there's the human-to-human resonance. And that's really important because that relates to your social system, it relates to your family, and it relates to part of your strategy as well. Because if you're being filled up energetically and you feel good, and you know how to move that energy from you to another person, there's your energy device that you don't really have to build and maybe go see somebody, but a hug goes an awful long way. Not doing the touchy-feely thing, but it's really, I mean, come on now, folks. Like when somebody's putting their hand on you and doing a healing or their hand on your back if you're not feeling so up at that moment, it does a lot for us. So think about your human resonance, your human-to-human resonance with you and other people. If you're talking about high-level consciousness and you just cut in front of somebody in line, you might want to rethink that. If you talk about love and maybe you're not illustrating that, you may want to think about that. Somebody said this once to me. They said, you can't fake frequency. You know, like you can't fake that, right? So think about what you're feeling, feel what you're feeling and acknowledge it. And so this is part of the emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence relates to consciousness. And without getting complicated on it, how you feel impacts what you think about and what you do with that feeling. So really, really important. How are you relating to other people? Some other part of the strategy is understand who you are, what you have, and what you want to do with it. Remember I was talking about telling the story, the narrative? So understand who are you in this world. If I put up those pieces of media and some of you said, Stephen Greer, you know, the New Earth Nation, whatever the Humanitat, I think they're called now. Because we're critics for each other's work, aren't we? Come on, I've all heard you say it. That guy doesn't have what he thinks he has. Come on, it's part of what... I've been in this for a little while too, folks. I've heard it. We've heard it all. And we've even done it. I've done it. I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I'm perfect, not even close. But what I realized, and I think what we realize is the more that this comes out, the more you start to figure out who you really are in relation to them, right? And who they are in relation to you. It helps us to form what we have, who we are, and why we're here to do it. So there's a benefit in that. Some other things about your strategy is, do you want to open source? Do you want to be exclusively for profit? These are some things to realize, and you know, this topic is hot, as we saw yesterday, more specifically. And it's important to think about that in advance. And I've got some good news for you a little bit later in regards to that as well. So additional funding, who's making the decisions? And a lot of you have been through this, you know this. Who are they associated with, and what do they really want to feature? What is it, that they're telling someone else about this? Do you want to do more collaboration? Is this helpful for you? Do you want to bring in, if you're someone who's an older inventor, do you want to bring in the younger generation to assist with you? Is this part of your legacy, perhaps? Do you want to bring in other disciplines? Do you want to bring in intuitives to your work? Do you want to bring in maybe people that have just a different slant? Is that going to help? So, this is part of strategy, and this is a piece where, so going back to successful teams, so I helped, as we were talking about in the academic and corporate world, people be successful, and what you realize is having a mix of different skills and abilities, but people focused on the same mission and the same vision. As long as they've got that same mission and vision, having that different skill and abilities was actually a nice, healthy complexity to the team. So again, something to think about. And it may challenge you out of your comfort zone a little bit, but you may get to where you want to go in a little bit of a different way. Again, we talk about the sensationalism piece. Maybe there's a next phase for this project. Maybe you need to, isn't the inventor never done with the one device? Yes? Never. My brother's a builder. He's never finished with his house. There's always something, for 5 years, how come your front steps are not done? To the foyer to the house. I couldn't figure it out. And his wife laughs and she says, don't you get it? He's a builder. He's constantly building. So what is it that you can get done? Maybe you just need to get this one done to move on to phase 2. And that may be a hard conversation to really have, because it's like you don't want to let the baby go till the baby's perfect, but someone else may want to come in and just get that finished for you if you don't. And I've seen that happen. It's a little sad when it does, but again, it's a critical conversation to have. NEM and BEM, I'll talk about that in the next slide. So values. And they may have changed in the last 6 months to last year, but what is inherent to you for yourself and the planet? So what's really important to you? Why do you do what you do? Sometimes we run around going, the next key to the device, the next piece to the device, this next thing to the device. How do your values play into that? What's your mission and what's your legacy? Have you gone on a bit of a chase mode and maybe forgot why you're really doing what you're doing? And that's a bit of the yin piece to kind of pull back on that yang just a tiny bit to maybe create some of that balance. Maybe. How might your view have shifted with these recent changes in the world? We're living in unprecedented times right now. Have your personal values shifted? And have you made those explicit? Maybe family is more important to you now than whatever was more important to you before. And maybe that's having you focus creating a medical healing device, which we saw earlier, than maybe what else you were working on, or maybe you're working on both. Because we are living in the bizarre world, as Erin pointed out, so it makes us shift and change. I know for me, my values have shifted. I wake up every single day and go to sleep at night completely 100% focused on this work. And so for some of you, you might be like, I've already been there, I've already done it. I've already been 100% focused. But my values shifted, that we don't stop until we get to where we need to go. No questions asked. Here's a big one, and this was always a key when teaching and working with clients, doing emotional intelligence work. And I worked with a lot of leaders, so these were folks that had a ton of responsibility. And this is always a big question, is there something that you're feeling that you're ignoring that needs to be addressed with what you're working on? So that little thing that you ignore that's still in here, that eats at you every day, a little bit, but you keep ignoring it. And that's unfortunately normal, but not effective. So is there something that's happening and going on? Maybe you're contemplating taking money from somebody to help your work. But it's a little, doesn't feel 100% right, and well, I really need to just do this because I want to get this next piece. But we say, pay attention to that feeling, because the feeling is there for a reason. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is a valid feeling in the sense of it will be true, but make it aware, make it conscious. That's, bringing in this next level. Or maybe it's, you know what, damn it, I am really stubborn and I don't want to admit it, so I need to be more collaborative, because that will help. And that's not something I've done before. Somebody's smiling over there. So making our values more explicit helps us, because that's where the deep juju comes from, right? It's like what you care about, when you really care about something, that's where that energy and that momentum comes from. Again, we talked a little bit about emotional intelligence, is if you can make it explicit to yourself, it may now be more important than ever. Is this helpful? Yep. Yeah. All right. Oh. That's my little fractal, who's not so little anymore. She's 14, but I just couldn't resist because I miss her at this stage. So, Jeane and I talk about this a lot. Why we do this is for 7 generations out. We do it for the planet as a whole. I do it because I can't stand the world that I think she's going to inherit if we don't. I can't even fathom it anymore. My brain doesn't even want to go there. And ask yourself that question. The decisions and actions that you're making today, is that for the next to come? It may be part of your dharma, it may not be, but I don't think that I could stand up here today and not talk about strategy and communication without talking about that piece as well. And there seems to be a big gap between some of you and new people coming on the scene, because there's a massive gap of good, real information. And where are they getting their skills? How are they being trained? So the part that bothers me, that I will admit, is when I talk to investors, and I talk to investors regularly, consistently, and it's the same damn conversation. Well, like you've all heard, well, when you have a device, we have the funding, we have the money. When you have the device, we have the funding, we have the money. And I would really love to see that conversation shift, because what about this next generation? Where are they getting the technical skills and the training to understand about this phenomenon, right? Where can they go to get their hands and to work on this, to see the results and to see the impact? We have a gap. That's real. And so this wealth of knowledge exists that has been done. The people that Jeane has talked to, the people that Jeane has met, and I've spent the last year with Guy Oblinsky. He's almost 90 years old, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, the information that he has, the combination of the spiritual information with the technical, right? And I'm going, so we ended up bringing certain people to go see him that were of a younger generation, and they're starting to collaborate, but there's still this gap that exists. And I don't know how we can really talk about this big change on the planet unless maybe we've incorporated that piece. And so that's where that a bit more of that yin stuff starts to come in, to say, well, what else can we do to bring this, to light? And there's a couple of ideas on that. And by the way, whatever I'm saying, nobody else has not thought of. Y'all thought of this. It's just a matter of putting it in a way that we all get to experience it collectively together tonight. And I'm so aware of that, the wealth of knowledge. They said, well, how do you feel about giving a talk? How are you feeling? I'm like, oh, the intellectual bandwidth in the room is quite large. So, everyone's extremely advanced and extremely smart here. So this is nothing new, it's just a reminder in a bit of a different way. For from a collaborative aspect, and this stuff is cool. When I see this, it like rings my happy bell. When you see people collaborate and then boom, there's a spark. Something new, something different happens. Maybe with the collaboration, they can help explain other effects and describe it in a different way, right? So if you think you have something and then someone comes and says, you know, I don't really think you have what you have, but I think you have this. Wow, it's new pieces of information that come into play to help. Academic partnerships, as I was referring to earlier, I think you are going to see more of that. And how do you want to participate with that? To what degree? In my selfishness and stubbornness, I would say be firm in knowing, again, who and what you are, because don't let academia steer you. Have it be a collaborative relationship. That's what I'm again, sensing and picking up, and I don't think most people in this room would allow that to happen either way, but at the same time, I think it needs to be said and made explicitly. So part of New Energy Movement, we did combine with Global BEM, so it's kind of like a Dr. Seuss term, NEM-BEM, is what we're looking at for our name. So we've been spending very actively the last 6 months behind the scenes working out how this relationship is going to roll, move. We have a dedicated team of people. We have lawyers on our board. We have high-level vetters. We have scientists. We have engineers. We have people that, again, think very, very differently, but a nice, solid, committed volunteer team to start off with. And soon we'll be able to start paying people, like literally very, very shortly. So part of this is what we call exchangers. We're connected with incubator labs, and there's a couple on the East Coast. How many of you have heard of Sam Mason? If you can raise your hand. So we just have like 2 people that have heard of Sam. This guy is amazing. He started a couple of incubator labs. He's worked with the Tesla Science Foundation, but he's done what I call that community groundwork, like crunching and going to museums, like the Philly Museum, and working in New York, in New Jersey as well. And he has actual incubator labs. So he's got, and these are not small spaces. So he's got people coming in, actually working on these technologies, and they offer grants to younger people that come in that can actually show their Tesla, expertise by building devices. Raise your hand if you've heard of that before. All right, raise your hand if you think that's cool. Yes, so it's happening. And he ended up getting Microsoft as his client. He's teaching Microsoft how to understand Tesla technology. Right? So, okay. And it's not in this covert way. It has nothing to do with that. They're basically interested in offering something different to their employees to help their thinking be expanded more creatively. So go figure, right? So this is getting out of the fringe and getting into different spaces and places. And with these incubator labs, what I would say is this: there's some that are operating, and again, NEM-BEM is connected with these labs now, but we're calling them exchangers because they can operate independently. They don't need to, have the mother or father, overseeing them. That's not what it's about. It's about pure, clean collaboration with healthy boundary conditions, but nobody is owning anything on anyone else, and creative structuring helps to do that. So I put something on here, ET resonance, so you can have something as practical as basic, building certain machines and getting an output that's not going to be dangerous to, people actually working on anti-gravity technology. So these level of incubator labs that have been popping up right now are really, really interesting. So this is part of the collaborative effort. Aaron, putting on these conferences, as Jeane has said, the things that have come out of the collaboration on these conferences is really genius. And a big thank you to you and to those who have preceded you as well, because to me, this is a real conference. It's where people actually come, learn, exchange, and walk out with different pieces of information that they had previously that they can actually do something with. And that's a big credit to you. So thank you. So what else NEMBEM is getting involved in is we do have access to alternative media. It's a piece that we've been working on to vet out and to know those organizations that have good channels that will not sensationalize and will actually report accurately and with good ethics and integrity about this piece. So we've been working on that, and we actually have a couple of very good solid partnerships in relation to this. So what does that mean? If you need assistance with a device that you want to get some media around, one, to help you to just spread the word, or two, maybe it's from a security standpoint that you don't want to keep it so insular, we can help you with that. We also are doing, finally, Joel Garvin had been talking about this for a long time, our testing and vetting protocols. So we have a team of professional folks that, again, are willing to volunteer their time and energy to come up with these protocols, and we'll have our first draft by August 31st. If any of you would like to be involved in that process, just see me, and we can talk about potential collaboration. The goal is those will be made public, and those will be shared liberally. So that's not, something that we'll hide. We are a public organization, and those needed to happen, and now they're finally happening with this professional team that we have. So that's the vetting and protocol process. So I will shift it over to Jeane in one moment, but I had a little something I wanted to share as well. Since the cat was slightly let out of the bag today earlier about, let's call it non-traditional ways of knowing information, wherever that's coming from. As I was saying, it's important for you to know what is shifting and changing out there. There's a book called Beyond UFOs, the Science of Contact. And it's comprised of a survey. So the survey was done with 3,600 people from 110 countries in 5 languages. This was started by Dr. Ed Mitchell and Dr. Rudy Shield, again, Harvard astrophysicist. It's going to be an 800-page book. There'll be 21 chapters, and this is over this 4-year study, but it's actually much longer than that, that they've been working on this. But that's going to come out in January of 2018. And what it does is it begins to demystify something that people don't ever really talk about. Yet the reality is it does seem like there's something that is potentially ramping up. And wouldn't it behoove us to grow up in our emotional maturity to be able to incorporate this variable in to understand how it's potentially affecting what we're building it for, and maybe this is something that's helping us out. So I wanted to share that with you because that will be likely accepted in academic institutions because there's a team of 10 PhDs that are on it as well. So thank you. And Jeane is going to talk about communication. And I appreciate your time.
Great. You can see why I like working teamwork with Susan, and we're kind of, she's a poster child, or I'm the poster grandmother for collaboration between generations, and it's great fun. So the piece that I have about nitty-gritty little things about communication, I'm not going to take that much time on because it's kind of really prosaic compared to the big picture, and also because it's late and you've been sitting a lot. Wanted to acknowledge the expertise in the room again. We put Walt's name here on this as Walt Jenkins knows how to do videos. We have other people here who know how to do magazines and writing. So I'll just make a point about plain language. It kind of came in my face this week. My brother's a retired lawyer, and he kind of surprised me when he made such a big thing about criticizing a very well-known politician for using the word get. G-E-T. And, you know, he said, everybody knows you should use the word obtain. And I thought, I'm a wordsmith, and I use the word get. I know obtain it's very clear, and it's a good word, and it's only 2 syllables, so it's good. But I went and asked some of my friends who are still working in the media, and I said, weren't we taught to use a simple word rather than a multi-syllable word when we have a choice? And yeah, I said, well, I was thinking maybe there was something about the word get that I didn't get. And they said, well, I think your lawyer friend didn't get the menu, or the memo. And I looked up online plain language training. It turns out that the law societies are giving their lawyers plain language workshops, and the FAA, and even the Department of Energy gives plain language training to its contractors and employees since 2013. So I felt justified in using that. And we just for fun came up with some examples of being too wordy and what you could just say instead. You know, if you find yourself saying with reference to the fact that, just say about, okay? Or there can be little doubt that, just say probably. Or I don't think you're going to be talking this way in every day, but you might be writing a paper and say, take cognizance of the fact that, just probably, you know. Or at such times, just say when. If you're saying an adequate number of, just say enough. And I think that's enough of the tips at this late hour. Do you want to say anything more?
Maybe, did I turn this on? Oh,
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we just all need to go to symbols. Maybe that's why we see symbols, right? Maybe we need to simplify. But that's what you're saying is to simplify the message, and it creates the bridge so people can understand and move along the trajectory, hopefully, with you to be part of your mission.
Mm-hmm. And maybe one of the main messages is about the changing times, things changing so fast. And I've seen kind of 10-year cycles. In around 96, 97, it seemed like the field was really going to move fast. There were some really excellent conferences going on in Colorado with high-level people, and there were several books came out, Callum Coates' Living Energy, and Richard Milton's in the UK, I can't remember, and Coming Energy Revolution. But in general, people were quite optimistic, and then things kind of faded a bit. It just didn't seem like there was as much activity as and the revolution didn't come. The year 2000, about 10 years ago, I was in Europe at a conference, and Paul Laviolette was there. I remember we had a think tank afterwards, and it was about these very topics, strategizing what to do to bring out the new energy against everything that was working against it. We were still optimistic, still didn't quite happen the way we thought it would. Again, I'm optimistic about what's happening right now, but I really think that in the cycling, it's kind of a little bit higher each time. It's a bit of spiraling upward, not just circling around to the same position. And I feel that right now, we're at a point in the cycling that we can catch the wave and get it out there.
Well, wait. You gotta
Yeah.
see, this goes to show you something. We have to talk about the book.
Okay, we're working on a book. And I'm learning from Susan about my perfectionism, so it's not done yet. But so go to hiddenenergy.org, and if you get on our mailing list, then we can give you updates on our progress, and it'll be before the end of the year. Is all I can promise.
Now you can clap. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Questions? Sure. Forgot about that. We're ready to go. Sorry.
Ready off stage.
Do you want, Jean, do you want to sit?
My question is, how would you propose Hello? How would you propose to take this message to the scientific community and to influence the curriculum in the universities around the world? Open question.
Okay.
Thoughts on it?
My comment is don't do it the way our friend Bill did years ago with stacks of mailings that wasted a lot of money, but that was old technology, and anyone now would do it with, of course, new technology. But I personally want to make the point that your communications that go out are so important, even when it's just something you're posting online, because they'll stay on forever. But particularly when you have an important email that could potentially get you funding, or something that you're writing onto your website, please ask for help unless you're a whiz at the English language. I don't know how many brilliant scientists I know who cannot spell. And to you, that you've got more important things on your mind, it doesn't matter. But to the critics out there, it gives them a reason to dismiss you as a yokel or whatever. So it may be picky, but please ask someone you know who is good at grammar and can catch maybe when you weren't being as clear as you could. And cut your verbose writings or speaking in half. If you're doing a video, keep it under, 2 minutes?
Oh, well, actually, for informational video, yeah, 2 minutes, if you can. If you're just trying to grab their attention, if you can do it in 45 seconds, which sounds crazy, but people will tune out after a certain period of time. So if you can say it compelling within 30 to 45 seconds, that's proven to be more effective, yeah.
But I know your question was specifically about reaching a scientific community. You got any answers on that?
Jean, go ahead.
Is that how to get it into the university curriculum to change, you know what I mean? New course line. There's another one. It's not in there.
Right. Well, they're going to need to be able to see the effect, to verify the effect, and then, again, you'll have some new curriculum that will derive from that. But be sure that the academic institution is going to scrutinize the heck out of it first, in order for that to happen. But I do believe it's coming, quickly down the pipeline. Yeah. Thanks, Al.
Hello. Over here on this side.
Oh. I'm like, how'd you throw your voice over there?
That's right. I'm hiding and
Jesus.
talking to you. One of the things that you guys mentioned was that you noticed that you'd been in academia and you'd encountered people that seemed to have a sincere interest and you perhaps you heard Walt's horror stories and his experience in encountering academia, but there's a number of people who would like to get some real honest, another good quality inventors in here who would like to get some real good quality, sincere interest.
Yeah.
And you do have those connections then.
Yes.
Sweet.
Yes. Yes. No, it's emphatic, and it's in the process of happening, and there's still sensitivity because of, the people that are really willing to go out on the limb, they have to be careful. And so that's why I say it a bit humbly and with great respect, because of knowing the position that they're putting themselves into. But they know that this is happening, and with, again, due respect, they know that this is what they've been put on the planet to do too. So.
One is a response with the question you had earlier, which is we don't have very many women involved. So as a woman's perspective, how do we get them involved? And then second question is, I know a lot of the guys that are in this room, we have a driving passion for what we do, to bring the technologies to advance the stuff, but at the same time as we have, I don't know if you call it a fear or a worry of protecting ourselves because of the powers not wanting these things out there, the academy disproving what we've proven to be accurate, things of that nature. So how do you go about defending against that?
That's two questions. Go ahead. Do you want to take the feminine piece first?
Well, the first part, one piece is getting women involved, is they can taken active part in organizations like New Energy Movement, Global Breakthrough Energy Movement. Can you take the rest of it?
Yeah, I think making the bridges of what this is and how it's important in a language that is something that's holistic. Because
You want to see the big picture, not the little pieces.
Thank you.
My wife always says to me every day,
see, that's
"Tell
what.
me when you're done. Tell me when you're done. Come on, what are you looking for?"
Right. So again, maybe seeing the big picture and thank you, and being able to communicate that, because that's what we're finding from that study that I'm talking to. You do have people that know that they're here to do something significant on this planet to help, and there's not a gender imbalance. That's actually, that piece is quite balanced, and so there is roles for both genders to play. I think it comes down to, I'll just say this, one of the pieces that I've seen is it comes down to, there's a lot of subtleties that everybody can do. And so I'll give you, like Jeane has spent years doing this, and maybe, again, not like sitting at a table and being ignored, right? Or not being asked her opinion on something. Yes?
I don't want to come.
But I'm making a point though with this, is that if I think both Jeane and I have learned to move through that factor, and other women have as well, but maybe some haven't.
Oh,
And
I know what you're talking about.
yeah, so sometimes you're not going to get the invitation to the table, so you need to pull up the seat and sit there anyways. And that requires a lot of, painstaking grit and patience and kindness as well, but sometimes being like, well, hey, I'm going to speak up regardless. And I've got on the NEMBEM team, there's one woman that's there amongst, we've got eight guys. And so I'm actively trying to figure out, well, who can, come into the fold here, because it's slightly exhausting at times. I'm like, ugh. But the good news is there is a balance most of the times with the leadership and with how we're navigating and moving through things. And I think as well, there's an appreciation for the yin that men get to experience. So it's not just about the feminine that has the yin, the male has the yin inside of them, and you get to have that piece of you exercised when you allow more of the yin in. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Like you can be a little softer, you can be a little bit more sensitive, you can talk a little bit more about things that you're feeling, maybe as it relates to the technology that you didn't have a chance to verbalize otherwise. So I think being mindful of even how you're treating females around you that are actually trying to be part of this. The whole little lady you're not going to understand, you may want to stop doing that. Not that some of you have done that, but be mindful of how you're approaching that invitation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I know what you're talking about
sorry.
now. Yeah.
And we didn't answer the second part of his question, the security piece. Sorry.
I run my own, and of course I have my own worries with my family, my kids. I get out, and I travel all over different places and everything else, working with the technologies that I work with. But where you're talking about we're getting out on mainstream media, how would we go about protecting ourselves and yet giving credibility at the exact same time to what we're working on? Because now we're physically exposing ourselves out there to anybody who's looking or anybody who's watching that may not be in our best interest.
Yeah, you mentioned getting out into mainstream media. You would be wise to somehow have a team together so that if you are hit with a lot of interest, you can handle it. Some people put out, say, a press release before they're really ready. They don't have a website, they don't have their message into sound bites. They're just not ready. And they need a team. They need somebody, ideally, to answer the phone if whatever gets out in a big way. So I would suggest don't rush it. But I know what you're saying. And this is what we want for you, is support.
And I would just echo that and say a really well-coordinated plan. Have a couple of dry runs in advance. I mean, maybe that's sometimes why you think you have something and then you don't, because you have a couple of dry runs along the way until the moment comes, right? So maybe I think all that practice was for a reason, but a very, very well-coordinated plan. You have to have the security piece figured out, and that's something that NEMBEM is working on as well, the security aspect. The cybersecurity is huge. Catherine Austin Fitts talks about that in her talks, and we would be a little bit on the silly side to think that we should not have those bases covered. So again, I would say it's a really well-coordinated plan, and to seek partnerships out with trustworthy people, so you're not doing it completely solo, because that is probably not the safest way to walk across the road. Yeah, thank you.
This question goes along a little bit with that gentleman's, but there's been a history within, I guess, the subject matter of suppression, and out, like when you look at what happened to Reich,
Yep.
or, like Tesla's papers and that kind of stuff. And so there is, a certain component of where this information maybe hasn't, where the powers that be haven't want the information out.
Right.
But your presentation is about getting the information out. And so I'm wondering if you think that there's been some kind of a change in the zeitgeist of the time, that this is actually the right time, because there is I think that probably a lot of the people in here have a sense of, well, how much do I let out? How much do I keep back? Just because of that. And your presentation is great, but it also pushes, it's a little bit counter, I think, to the intuitions that a lot of people have come into this subject area with.
There's a balance there. Comment on that?
Yeah, well, the thing is, you don't have to use the media at all. You can do what you're doing totally in private. Absolutely. I mean, this is for people that want to share and want to get it out or get funding or be ready to move this because they believe in open sourcing and they want to be able to move it out towards the world. So, trust me, if people want to work in this completely privately and not do this, absolutely. There's no doubt. And you asked the question, is there something changing? What I can say for myself is I was born knowing that I'm here to do this. Like, I came into this, I don't know another reality. That's what I was born knowing. And what I can say is something since these last few years, especially these last 6 months to a year, something has just popped exponentially. Now, whether or not that's just my reality, I don't think so, not with people raising their hands as they did earlier. So what that is, I don't know. But by communicating and talking and sharing where you feel directed, guided, magnetized, whatever, it starts to demystify it a bit and starts to drop some of that fear and transition it more towards a bit of more confidence and comfort and maybe even a bit more security to know how to navigate moving forward. My sense is it's not going to be one person bringing any device to the world. Maybe there's some weird security mechanisms set in the universe that we actually have to collaborate with each other. And it maybe needs to come out similarly, from a timing standpoint for a safety standpoint. Sorry, I said standpoint twice. Bad grammar. Sorry, Jay. See, she gets frustrated with my writing. You can blame her. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know. But use the media if you need it. And some people feel safer. Colleagues that I know that do certain things, they say, go on the radio, go on, do this TV show. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But they say, do that so people can hear you and they can take you out or what have you. But that's a matter of personal preference and what you want to use it for. But it's a great point, and thank you for asking. Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah, well, people are at different stages in their research, and you would want ones that pretty much near completion or have completed something to have that exposure because of the problem of premature exposure.
Yeah.
Can really cause problems. But I wanted to say, it's sort of like these research projects are like seeds throughout the world. All it and it's pretty much certain there will be a global cataclysm coming within our lifetimes. It's been predicted by many people. A global cataclysm, a super wave, in other words, cosmic ray volley coming from the galactic center. The chance of a solar flare, severe solar flare, are less because it seems the sun is going into a quiet phase,
Yeah.
at least for the next 20, 30 years. But we've seen...
Quiet phase too. You're getting too far from the mic.
Studying the past, the ice core record, we've seen these events in the past, and we know we're overdue for another one. The last one happened during the Middle Ages. The same thing happened today. It would completely wipe out all the communication systems, satellite systems. The EMPs would be enough to wipe out the electrical power systems. And that's when people are really going to take interest in what we're doing.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about threats or anything. You'll be the heroes, you know.
Well,
Except they won't be able to get on the internet.
Well, see, but that's very true. Go ahead.
Horse and buggy stage. No.
And maybe some of these, and maybe some people are actually anticipating that potential reality and doing things now to prepare for that. And maybe that's why higher consciousness and even telepathy is important that we begin to look at. So just a side note, if the internet goes down, we've got this amazing human, body and astral body, and maybe, there's a quicker learning curve there to help out with that.
And can't
That
we
was
create our own, as Paul Babcock said, create our own reality by having a coherent vision
yes.
and putting it out with positive emotion? And
Yeah, I love this Imagineering component. Over here. Hi. The voice.
See,
Ta-da.
you gotta understand, I looked over there about, 2 minutes ago, there's nobody standing there, so.
Things change.
Yes, yeah.
times are changing.
Susan's getting a reality slap, yes.
So I love this Imagineering component to this. It's a very important part of the process. I think imagining the point when the genie is out of the bottle, and that's kind of how you're talking. But the genie is not out of the bottle yet. And that's what everyone is concerned with. And I think the Imagineering component is as important a component as anything. But I can't go down the road and buy my 10K air conditioner sized, window air conditioner sized 10K unit. I can't buy that yet. And it will change everything when it happens. Whether I lease it or buy it or whatever I do, the genie's not out of the bottle yet. And that's why all this trepidation is still there, because we've been hearing, since the turn of the century, the last century before, about how all these guys are disappeared. And I hear Walt saying, yeah, they offered me 10, then they offered me 100, and gee, what's the third offer? So I think that's still a reality. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Well, as someone who has personally experienced something similar to that, so, so if you've personally experienced something like that, your life is different. And does it stop what you're doing or why you're here? For some, it may slow you down. For some, it may speed you up. Everybody's different. Everybody's got a different story. And so with all due respect, when you said you may sense some trepidation, I don't know if the room collectively shares that. And again, there's nothing up here that's saying, oh, you have to do this. This is saying, look, this is what's going on right now. This is what's going on from a media perspective.
Thank you for addressing the security component.
Well, it's key, it's essential. And yes, I've had colleagues that have not shown up the next day and some that, didn't make it across the street. And so, but does it stop you from doing what you're doing? For me, no. But does it make you safer? Do you try to be safer and wiser and more strategic? Absolutely. That's why the synchronicity and the intuitive piece is key. So nobody's got all the answers, but together I think we can probably figure it out, how to navigate a little bit clearer
I have some ideas.
Thank you, because
So
It's
where's all
about
the
doing it
power
together.
right now that we're all afraid of, right? It's somewhere out there. It's a centralized authority. We need decentralization. I would like to hear you speak about how open source can actually benefit the people who are scared most about open source. And there's also a couple of, there's a movie called Thrive that's really good that talks about, some of you people know about that. You can check that out online. And ubuntuplanet.org. And it all addresses all these topics you're talking about. So,
perfect. Thank you.
ubuntuplanet.org, like the operating system Ubuntu, but it's, yeah, Michael Tellinger, yeah.
Like one of the people in the room here to talk to about Ubuntu organization is Ed Bensel here.
What was his question? His question was about, open source. Yeah, I can whisper, you guys can still hear me. Yeah. Thank God I didn't go to the bathroom. That would have been a different story. So, truthfully, I'll tell you, I don't have an opinion on open sourcing or not, and I'm going to tell you why. I feel like the inventors and those who feel passionate about the whys to do it and why not to, I feel like that is a tremendous conversation that needs to be had. Like have that be a well-facilitated conversation. And what we've done with NEMBEM is offer people to open source if they want to, and if they don't, then they've got that option as well. We wanted to build a breathable system, so they didn't feel compelled on either side of the equation. And we went back and forth because certain people in the organization were like, no, this needs to be open sourced. And then you hear other inventors' stories going, I've worked for 30 years on this. What do you mean I'm not going to be able to take care of my family? That doesn't make any sense.
There's ways for people to be paid in open source. Yeah.
Well, so and you know what? That's, again, something that probably needs to be made more explicit, because the term of what it is and what actually goes along with it, I don't think has been well defined. And maybe it has, I just don't know.
And also, it's easier for people to be protected that way. I can pick any one person off really easily. I mean, people end up seeing bullets sitting in their mailboxes and stuff like that. And it's like, but you can't pick everybody off. Yeah.
Right, well, that's what I was saying earlier, that there does seem to be something shifting and rising, and maybe there's some weird, system that's built in the universe with this information that's coming in and what people feel compelled to do, because it's not just happening here. You've got places in Europe that, the technology is moving really, really fast. In certain countries that are very interested in it as well. So I think, as Jeane said, I think we're in a different spiral up right now. And it may not be as creepy, and that's the word I would use, creepy, as it used to be.
Thanks.
So, you're welcome.
We have time for maybe one more question.
Go ahead.
Okay. A few minutes back, you mentioned someone's name in passing. And I was kind of wondering if everyone here knew who that was.
Who was it?
Catherine Austin Fitz.
Sorry. If they knew who she was.
Yes,
Do you know who she is?
a little.
Would you like to comment?
No, I would actually, I'm sorry. I'd actually just like to see how many people know that name.
Catherine Austin Fitz.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, she is brilliant, and she is someone that.
Undersecretary of HUD under Ronald Reagan.
Yes, she's someone that we've gotten some advice from. Let's just put it that way, and so I can just simply say that. And she's a wonderful, wonderful person.
Does anybody know what the event is coming soon means? It's all over the internet for months now. Keep seeing it on there. The event is coming soon. Does that have something to do with Stephen Greer, or what is it?
It was his conference.
It was his conference.
Well, there's the event could be the cosmological event that people are referring to, or it could be something else. I don't.
Marketing perspective.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, there's so much. This is the sad part of it, is so much of this field, I think, with certain things has been co-opted. And that drives me a little nuts. So this is coming, this is happening. It depends the what is this, but unfortunately when people say disclosure is coming, I'm sure it is, but I don't think that stops people from sharing whatever they want to share on a regular basis. But I can't comment on that. Somebody else can. I don't know what that is. Yeah.
Well, you were out there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, if we've got Hollywood people calling and asking, what's the event?
Good, I don't feel so.
No.
Maybe
Oh.
one final comment or question?
You mentioned that things might be moving faster in Europe
Yeah.
with this. I'd heard that Delft University tests free energy machines, in case people are interested. They're
What-
interested in
What university?
Delft in
Delft.
Holland.
Ah,
Thanks. Yeah.
yes, thank you.
It's kind of quite a creative area there in Holland, I think.
Yes.
For these new energy technologies.
I would agree with that.
Thanks for ending on that
Thank you
positive
so
note.
much.
One last point I'd like to make is just to remember when you're communicating and you want to sincerely want to bridge to the general public, leave the conspiracy behind. Remember that a vision is more powerful than a rant. Okay.
Thank you, Jeane Manning and Susan Manewich.